March 24th, 2022, Montreux, Switzerland. Four members of a family, an 8-year-old girl, father, mother, and mother's twin sister died after falling from the seventh floor of a building. A 15-year-old boy was in a coma and is recovering from serious injuries. He doesn't remember that day, investigators say. Swiss authorities appealed to preserve the privacy of the surviving boy. Forensic evidence revealed no signs of a struggle before death, and autopsies showed no traces of drugs. The police found the family's apartment full of food, medicine, and hygiene materials, carefully stored and organized. Searches of the apartment and electronic devices revealed that the collective suicide was carefully planned and even rehearsed. The members of this family rarely went out, and the children were educated at home. The two women were highly suspicious of the government and local authorities, investigators say, and raised their children believing the whole world was a hostile place. The police came the morning just before the tragedy to remind the father to go to a meeting with the local education authority to discuss homeschooling his son after he had failed to answer several calls. They wouldn't let the police in, and a few minutes later they were dead. After a year of investigation, Swiss authorities claimed that the family believed in conspiracy theories and were supporters of the social movement Survivalism. Survivalism is a social movement of individuals of groups called survivalism or preppers. Supporters of this movement have prepared to survive in the anarchy of an anticipated breakdown of society due to natural disasters, the collapse of the political economic system, various pandemics, world wars, and even zombie apocalypse and alien invasion. Survivalism emphasizes self-reliance, stockpiling supplies, and gaining survival knowledge and skills. This stockpiling of supplies is itself a wide spectrum, from survival kits to entire bunkers in extreme cases. Survivalists often acquire first aid and emergency medical pandemic training, self-defense training, martial arts, firearm safety, and self-sufficiency training, and they often build structures such as survival retreats or underground shelters that may help them survive a catastrophic failure of society. The Great Depression that followed the Wall Street crash of 1929 was most likely the trigger for the emergence of this movement. After the mentioned event, people realized that one day they could lose their existence if they are not ready for it. However, during the 1950s and 1960s, in the Cold War era, the fear of nuclear war reigned in the countries west of the Iron Curtain. Civil defense programs promoted public atomic bomb shelters, personal fallout shelters, and training for children. Later, Howard Ruff warned about socio-economic collapse in his 1974 book, Famine and Survival in America. Most of the elements of survivalism can be found there, including advice on food storage. Bruce D. Clayton and Joel Skousen have both written exclusively on integration fallout shelters into retreat homes. In 1975, Kurt Saxon began publishing a monthly tabloid-sized newsletter called The Survivor, which combined Saxon's editorials with reprints of 19th century and early 20th century writings on various pioneer skills and old technologies. Kurt Saxon used the term survivalist to describe the movement, and he claims to have coined the term preparedness consultant. Survival bookseller and California-based author Don Stevens popularized the term retreater to describe those in the movement, referring to preparations to leave cities for remote havens or survival retreats should society break down. In 1976, before moving to the inland Northwest, he and his wife authored and published the survivor's primer and update retreaters bibliography. For a time in the 1970s, the terms survivalist and retreater were used interchangeably. While the term retreater eventually fell into disuse, one newsletter deemed by someone to be one of the most reported on survivalism and survivalist retreats in the 1970s was The Personal Survivor, PS, latter circa 1977 to 1982. Published by Mel Tappan, who also authored the books Survival Guns and Tappan on Survival. The majority of the newsletter revolved around selecting, constructing, and logistically equipping survival retreats. Following Tappan's death in 1980, Carl Hess took over publishing the newsletter, eventually renaming it Survival of Tomorrow. In 1980, John Pugsley published the book The Alpha Strategy. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for 9 weeks in 1989. After 29 years in circulation, The Alpha Strategy remains popular with survivalists and is considered a standard reference for stocking food and household supplies as a hedge against inflation and future shortages. Further interest in the survivalist movement peaked in the early 1980s with Howard Ruff's book How to Prosper During the Coming Bad Years and the publication in 1980 of Life After Doomsday by Bruce D. Clayton. Clayton's book, coinciding with a renewed arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union, marked a shift in emphasis in preparations made by survivalists away from economic collapse, famine, and energy shortages. In the early 1980s, science fiction writer Jerry Pournelle was an editor and columnist for Survive, a survivalist magazine, and was influential in the survivalist movement. Ragnar Benson's 1982 book, Life of the Land in the City and Country, suggested rural survivor retreats as both a preparedness measure and a conscious lifestyle change. Interest in the movement picked up during the Clinton administration, due in the part to the debate surrounding the federal assault weapons ban and the ban's subsequent passage in 1994. The interest peaked again in 1999, triggered by fears of the Y2K computer bug. Another wave of survivalism began after the terrorist attacks in the USA on September 11, 2001. This resurgence of interest in survivalism appears to be as strong as the 1970s era focus on the topic. The fear of war, avian influenza, energy shortages, environmental disasters, and global climate change, coupled with economic uncertainty and the apparent vulnerability of humans after the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, and tsunami and Hurricane Katrina have increased interest in survivalism topics. Many books were published in the wake of the Great Recession in 2008 and the advent of the H1N1 swine flu in 2009, later offering survival advice for various potential disasters, ranging from an energy shortage and crash to nuclear or biological terrorism. During the COVID-19 pandemic, survivalism has reached its great peak. At the end of the day, television shows like Doomsday Preppers on the National Geographic Channel help to bring survivalism into the mainstream. Should we prepare for Doomsday or live our ordinary lives? Who knows? Maybe the answer is written somewhere in the stars.